Hello there, and welcome to Midnight Sleep Science. Tonight, something remarkable will happen inside your brain, something that happens every single night, whether you remember it or not. As you drift into sleep, your brain will not rest. Instead, it will embark on a journey through distinct stages, each with its own rhythm, its own purpose, its own mystery. And somewhere in the depths of that journey, you will dream. Dreams are not fantasies invented by the imagination. They are real neurological events, vivid, emotional, and deeply woven into the fabric of memory and survival. Scientists now know that during REM sleep, the stage most associated with dreaming, your brain becomes as active as it is when you are awake. The visual cortex lights up with images, the amygdala pulses with emotion, the hippocampus replays fragments of your day, stitching them into the tapestry of long-term memory. Yet the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logic and planning, goes quiet, allowing the strange, surreal narratives of dreams to unfold without question. What science has discovered about dreams is both beautiful and unsettling. Dreams are not random. They reflect the brain's effort to process fear, to consolidate memory, to make sense of emotion. Tonight, we will explore what happens inside your sleeping brain, the stages, the rhythms, the chemicals, and the dreams themselves. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, feel free to like and subscribe. But for now, let's begin. You lie down. The room is quiet. The sheets are cool against your skin. In this moment, you are awake, fully conscious, aware of the sounds around you, the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath. But something has already begun to shift. Your brain, just moments ago humming with the activity of the day, starts to slow. The neurons that kept you alert, that processed every word, every image, every decision, begin to fire less frequently. You are entering stage 1 sleep, the threshold between waking and sleeping, a place that lasts only a few minutes, but marks the beginning of a profound transformation. Scientists can measure this transition with remarkable precision. If electrodes were placed on your scalp right now, they would detect a change in the electrical patterns of your brain. During wakefulness, your brain produces beta waves, fast, irregular oscillations that reflect active thinking and alertness. But as you relax, these beta waves give way to alpha waves, which are slower, more rhythmic, like the gentle roll of ocean swells. Then, as you drift further, alpha waves fade too. In their place come theta waves, even slower, softer, like the deepening of breath before true sleep. Theta waves signal that your brain is no longer fully engaged with the external world. Your muscles relax, your eyelids grow heavy. You may experience hypnagogic hallucinations, brief, fleeting images or sensations that seem real but vanish as quickly as they appear. You might feel as though you are falling and your body jerks suddenly awake in what scientists call a hypnic jerk, a harmless muscle spasm triggered by the motor cortex as it begins to relinquish control. You are no longer fully awake, but you are not yet deeply asleep. This is a fragile state. A sound, a thought, a shift in temperature can pull you back to wakefulness in an instant. But if the conditions are right, if the room remains quiet, if your mind does not latch onto worry, you will slip past this threshold and descend into stage 2 sleep. Stage 2 is where most people spend the bulk of their night, accounting for nearly half of total sleep time. It is deeper than stage 1, but not yet the profound stillness of deep sleep. If someone were to whisper your name, you might not hear it. Your heart rate slows. Your body temperature drops slightly. The brain continues producing theta waves, but now something new appears in the electrical recording: sleep spindles. Sleep spindles are brief bursts of rapid brain activity, lasting only a second or two, but they play a crucial role in protecting your sleep from disruption. They act as a kind of neurological shield, filtering out external sounds and sensations that might otherwise wake you. Research has shown that people with more sleep spindles are better able to sleep through noise. These spindles also appear to be involved in memory consolidation, helping the brain transfer information from short-term to long-term storage. Even now, As you rest, your brain is working, sorting through the events of the day, deciding what to keep and what to discard. Alongside sleep spindles, another feature emerges: K-complexes. These are large, sharp waves that appear suddenly in the EEG recording, like a single drumbeat in a quiet room. Scientists believe K-complexes help the brain suppress arousal, keeping you asleep even when minor disturbances occur. They may also play a role in memory processing, though the exact mechanisms are still being studied. You are descending now, moving through layers of consciousness, like sinking slowly into water. Your brain is no longer trying to make sense of the world around you. The prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for complex thought, planning, and decision-making, begins to quiet. The thalamus, which acts as a relay station for sensory information, starts to close its gates. Sounds from the outside world, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant traffic, the settling of the house, no longer reach the parts of your brain that would normally interpret them. You are withdrawing inward, retreating from wakefulness into a state that is uniquely restorative. This withdrawal is not passive. Sleep is not simply the absence of waking. It is an active, highly regulated process involving multiple brain regions, neurotransmitters, and biological rhythms. As you lie here, your body is responding to an internal clock, the circadian rhythm that has been shaped by millions of years of evolution. This clock, located in a tiny cluster of cells in the hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, responds to light and darkness, coordinating the release of hormones that prepare your body for sleep. One of these hormones is melatonin, often called the sleep hormone. As evening approaches and light fades, the pineal gland in your brain begins to secrete melatonin into your bloodstream. Melatonin does not make you sleep directly, but it signals to your body that nighttime has arrived, lowering your core temperature and making you feel drowsy. By the time you lay your head on the pillow, melatonin levels are at their peak, creating the biological conditions for sleep to begin. At the same time, another chemical process is unfolding. Throughout the day, a molecule called adenosine has been building up in your brain. Adenosine is a byproduct of energy use. Every time a neuron fires, every time you think or move, adenosine accumulates. The longer you stay awake, the more adenosine accumulates, and the stronger the pressure to sleep becomes. This is why, after a long day, your eyelids feel heavy and your thoughts begin to blur. Adenosine binds to receptors in the brain, inhibiting the neurons that promote wakefulness and allowing sleep-promoting neurons to take over. Caffeine works by blocking these adenosine receptors, which is why a cup of coffee can temporarily push back the urge to sleep. But caffeine does not erase adenosine, it only masks it. Once the caffeine wears off, all the accumulated adenosine floods back, and the need for sleep returns with even greater force. But tonight there is no caffeine, no resistance. Your brain is listening to its own natural signals, allowing the sleep process to unfold as it was designed to. The neurons in your brainstem and hypothalamus that promote wakefulness, those that release histamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin, begin to fall silent. In their place, neurons that release GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter, become more active. GABA suppresses arousal, quiets the nervous system, and deepens the transition into sleep. You are sinking deeper now. Stage 2 sleep continues, but your brain is preparing for something more profound. The theta waves grow slower. The sleep spindles appear less frequently. Your muscles, already relaxed, release the last remnants of tension. Your breathing becomes steady, rhythmic, like the pull of a tide. And then, without you realizing it, you cross another threshold. You have entered stage 3, the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, sometimes called slow-wave sleep because of the long, rolling delta waves that now dominate your brain. These waves are the slowest your brain will produce during the night, moving at less than 4 cycles per second, a stark contrast to the rapid beta waves of wakefulness. If someone were to look at the EEG readout of your brain right now, they would see these large, sweeping oscillations, rhythmic, powerful, like the slow breathing of the earth itself. This is the sleep that restores you. This is where the body does its deepest work. Your heart rate has slowed to its lowest point of the night. Your blood pressure has dropped. Your breathing is deep and even, requiring no conscious effort. The muscles of your body are completely relaxed. And if someone were to try to wake you now, it would take considerable effort. You are far from the surface of consciousness, submerged in a state that feels almost like suspension. But your brain has not stopped working. In fact, during slow-wave sleep, some of the most important processes of the night are taking place. Growth hormone, which is essential for tissue repair, immune function, and cellular regeneration, is released in its greatest quantities during this stage. Children spend more time in deep sleep than adults because their bodies are growing, building bone and muscle, strengthening connections in the developing brain. Even in adulthood, this stage remains critical for physical restoration. The immune system, too, is at work. During deep sleep, the body produces cytokines, proteins that help fight infection and inflammation. This is why sleep deprivation weakens immunity, and why people who do not get enough deep sleep are more susceptible to illness. The body uses this quiet time, this withdrawal from the world, to repair what was damaged during the day and to prepare for what lies ahead. Memory consolidation also occurs during slow-wave sleep, though in a different way than it will later in the night. The hippocampus, a structure deep within the brain that is essential for forming new memories, begins to replay the events of the day. It does this in rapid bursts of activity called sharp wave ripples, which occur during the pauses between delta waves. These ripples allow the hippocampus to communicate with the cortex, transferring information from temporary storage into long-term memory. Not all memories are saved. The brain is selective, prioritizing what is meaningful, what is emotional, what is necessary for survival. Irrelevant details, what color shirt a stranger wore, the exact arrangement of objects on a desk, are allowed to fade. This process of forgetting is not a failure. It is essential. The brain cannot store everything. It must choose. You are unaware of all this. You feel nothing, remember nothing. To you, this stage of sleep is simply absence, a blank space in the night. Yet your body and brain are engaged in work that is anything but empty. You are being rebuilt, cell by cell, memory by memory. And then, after perhaps 20 or 30 minutes in this deep state, something begins to change. The delta waves start to recede. Your brain begins to stir, moving back toward lighter sleep. You are not waking, not yet, but you are rising toward the surface, preparing for a different kind of sleep altogether, one where the brain will awaken, even as the body remains still, one where you will dream. Something extraordinary is about to happen. Approximately 90 minutes after you first fell asleep, your brain begins to shift again, but this time the change is unlike anything that has come before. You are not waking up. You are not returning to lighter sleep. You are entering a state so paradoxical, so strange, that scientists initially struggled to understand it when they first discovered it in 1953. This is REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, and it marks the beginning of your first dream of the night. Your eyes, which have been still beneath closed lids for the past hour, suddenly begin to move. They dart back and forth rapidly, as though you are watching something unfold before you. But you are not looking at anything real. Your eyelids remain closed. The room is dark. What you are seeing exists only inside your brain. The shift into REM sleep is preceded by bursts of electrical activity originating deep in the brainstem. These are called pontogeniculo-occipital waves, or PGO waves, and they travel from the pons in the brainstem through the geniculate nucleus of the thalamus and into the occipital cortex, the visual processing center of the brain. These waves appear in clusters, firing every few seconds, creating pulses of activation that ripple through the visual system. This is why dreams are so intensely visual. Your brain is generating images from within, without any input from the eyes. If someone were to measure your brain activity right now with an EEG, they would see something astonishing. The slow, synchronized delta waves of deep sleep have vanished. In their place are fast, low-amplitude desynchronized brainwaves that look almost identical to the brainwaves of wakefulness. The electrical pattern suggests that your brain is awake, alert, and highly active. Yet you are deeply asleep, unresponsive to the world around you. This is why REM sleep is sometimes called paradoxical sleep. The brain acts as though it is awake, while the body remains profoundly asleep. It is a state of contradiction. Consciousness without awareness, perception without sensory input, experience without memory. Your heart rate, which had slowed during deep sleep, begins to fluctuate. It quickens, then slows, then quickens again, responding not to physical exertion, but to the emotional content of the dream unfolding in your mind. Your breathing becomes irregular, shallow one moment and deep the next. Blood pressure rises, core body temperature increases slightly, while skin temperature drops to its lowest point of the night. But the most striking feature of REM sleep is what happens to your muscles. Despite all this neural activity, despite the rapid eye movements and the fluctuating heart rate, the major muscles of your body become completely paralyzed. This paralysis is called REM atonia, and it originates in the brainstem, specifically in a region called the locus coeruleus. During REM sleep, this area sends inhibitory signals down the spinal cord, effectively shutting down motor neurons and preventing voluntary movement. This paralysis serves a crucial function. It prevents you from acting out your dreams. Without it, you might thrash, run, or reach for objects that exist only in the dream world. In rare cases, when this system malfunctions, a condition called REM sleep behavior disorder, people do act out their dreams, sometimes with dangerous consequences. But for most people, the paralysis holds firm, keeping the body still while the mind wanders through landscapes that feel utterly real. The chemical environment of your brain during REM sleep is unlike any other state. Acetylcholine, a neurotransmitter associated with learning and memory, floods the brain in abundance. This surge of acetylcholine activates the cortex, the thalamus, and the hippocampus, creating the vivid, hallucinatory quality of dreams. At the same time, three other neurotransmitters, serotonin, norepinephrine, and histamine, drop to nearly zero. These are the chemicals that, during wakefulness, help regulate mood, attention, and the formation of new memories. The absence of norepinephrine is particularly significant. Without it, experiences during REM sleep are not transferred into permanent memory. This is why dreams, no matter how vivid they feel in the moment, are so easily forgotten. The brain is capable of creating elaborate narratives, complex emotions, and richly detailed imagery, but it lacks the chemical mechanism to store these experiences. Most dreams dissolve within minutes of waking, slipping away like water through fingers. The prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and self-awareness, shows reduced activity during REM sleep. This deactivation explains much about the nature of dreams. In dreams, impossible things happen and you accept them without question. You might fly, or speak with someone who has been dead for years, or find yourself in a place that shifts and changes without reason. In waking life, the prefrontal cortex would immediately recognize these events as impossible, but during REM sleep, that critical voice is silent. The dream unfolds, and you experience it as though it were real. Meanwhile, other parts of the brain are intensely active. The amygdala, which processes emotion and fear, shows heightened activity during REM sleep. This is why dreams are often emotionally charged, filled with anxiety, joy, anger, or longing. The hippocampus, essential for memory, is also active, retrieving fragments of recent experiences and weaving them into the dream narrative. A conversation you had earlier in the day, a face you saw on the street, a place you visited years ago. All of these can appear in dreams, often in strange, distorted forms. The visual cortex lights up with activity, generating the imagery of dreams. The parietal cortex, involved in spatial awareness, contributes to the sense of movement and location within the dream. The limbic system, which governs emotion and memory, colors the dream with feeling. All of these regions work together, creating a simulation of reality that feels immediate and tangible. But this simulation is not perfect. Dreams are not coherent stories with clear beginnings, middles, and ends. They are fragmented, episodic, prone to sudden shifts in time and place. Characters appear and disappear. Settings transform without explanation. The logic of waking life does not apply. Yet within the dream, none of this seems strange. You accept the dream on its own terms, suspended in a state where questioning does not occur. Researchers studying REM sleep have used functional MRI and PET scans to observe which areas of the brain are most active during dreaming. They have found that the pattern of activation during REM sleep varies depending on what happened during waking hours. If you spent the day learning a new skill, regions involved in motor control and procedural memory may show increased activity during REM. If you experience something emotionally significant, the amygdala and hippocampus become more engaged. Dreams, it seems, are not random. They are shaped by experience, by emotion, by the brain's ongoing effort to process and integrate what has been learned. This first REM period of the night is relatively brief, lasting only about 10 minutes. As the night progresses, REM periods will grow longer, with the final REM period before waking sometimes lasting up to an hour. But even in this short first dream, the brain is doing essential work. One of the leading theories about the function of REM sleep is that it plays a role in emotional regulation. During REM, the brain appears to reprocess emotional experiences from waking life, particularly those that were distressing or unresolved. The amygdala, which encodes emotional memories, becomes active during REM sleep, but it does so in an environment where stress hormones like norepinephrine are absent. This may allow the brain to revisit difficult emotions without the full intensity of the original experience, helping to reduce emotional reactivity over time. Studies have shown that people deprived of REM sleep show increased emotional sensitivity and difficulty regulating negative emotions. Conversely, those who get adequate REM sleep report feeling more emotionally balanced and resilient. This suggests that dreaming is not simply a byproduct of brain activity during sleep. It may be an essential process. For mental health, REM sleep also appears to be important for certain types of learning and memory consolidation. While slow-wave sleep consolidates declarative memories, facts, events, details, REM sleep seems to focus on procedural and emotional memories. Skills that require motor coordination, like playing an instrument or typing, improve after periods of REM sleep. Creative problem solving and the ability to see connections between seemingly unrelated ideas also appear to be enhanced by REM. The brain during REM sleep engages in what some researchers call associative processing. It takes disparate elements from memory and combines them in novel ways. This may be why solutions to problems sometimes appear in dreams, or why creative insights often arise after a night of sleep. The loosening of logical constraints, the deactivation of the prefrontal cortex, allows the brain to explore connections that would be dismissed during waking thought. But perhaps the most profound aspect of REM sleep is simply this: you are experiencing something. Even though you will not remember most of it, even though it has no external reality, the dream feels real in the moment. You see, you move through a world that exists only in neural firing patterns. This raises fundamental questions about the nature of consciousness itself. If the brain can generate such vivid experiences without any sensory input, what does that say about the nature of waking experience? How much of what we perceive as reality is constructed internally rather than received from the outside world? These are questions that science is still exploring. But what is clear is that REM sleep and dreaming are not peripheral to human experience. They are central to it. Every night you will enter this state multiple times. Every night your brain will create worlds, narratives, emotions, and every morning most of it will be forgotten, leaving only traces, a lingering feeling, a fragment of an image, the sense that something important happened just beyond the edge of memory. The first REM period ends as subtly as it began. The rapid eye movements slow, then stop. Brain waves shift back toward the slower patterns of non-REM sleep. The paralysis lifts slightly and your body may shift position. You are descending again, moving back through the stages toward another period of deep sleep, followed by another REM period, in a cycle that will repeat throughout the night. A dream is not a story told to you by some external narrator. It is something you build moment by moment from the inside out. Every image, every sound, every sensation within the dream is constructed by your brain using the same neural machinery that processes reality during waking hours. The difference is that during a dream, there is no external world to check against. The brain is both the author and the audience, creating a simulation of experience that feels entirely real. The foundation of this architecture begins deep within the brain, in a structure called the thalamus. During waking hours, the thalamus acts as a relay station, receiving sensory information from the eyes, ears, skin, and other sense organs, then routing that information to the appropriate areas of the cortex for processing. When you see a tree, light enters your eyes, travels along the optic nerve to the thalamus, and from there to the visual cortex where the image is constructed. When you hear a sound, the signal follows a similar path, from ear to thalamus to auditory cortex. But during REM sleep, the thalamus behaves differently. It no longer receives signals from the outside world because the sensory gates have closed. The eyes, though moving rapidly beneath closed lids, send no visual information to the brain. The ears still function, but most sounds are filtered out, prevented from reaching conscious awareness. Yet the thalamus remains active. It continues to send signals to the cortex as though sensory information were arriving. The brain interprets these signals as perception, and so you see, hear, and feel things that do not exist outside your own neural activity. This is why dreams are so intensely visual. The occipital cortex, located at the back of the brain and responsible for processing vision, shows high levels of activity during REM sleep. Neurons in this region fire in patterns similar to those that occur when you look at real objects in waking life. Your brain generates images, faces, landscapes, objects, without any input from the eyes. These images are not photographs retrieved from memory, but reconstructions, assembled from fragments of visual experience and recombined in novel ways. The parietal cortex, which processes spatial awareness and the sense of where your body is in space, also contributes to the dream. This is why you can move through a dream environment, why you have a sense of location, of being somewhere. The brain creates a three-dimensional space and places you within it, even though your physical body remains still in bed. You walk, run, reach for objects, climb stairs. All of this happens in neural simulation, not in physical reality. The temporal lobes, involved in memory and language, add narrative elements to the dream. Characters appear, people you know, strangers, composites of multiple individuals. They speak, though the words often lack the clarity and logic of waking conversation. The brain draws on stored memories of faces, voices, and interactions, weaving them into the unfolding dream. But these elements are not replayed exactly as they occurred in life. They are transformed, distorted, combined with other memories in ways that reflect the associative, non-linear processing of the dreaming brain. All of these regions, the thalamus, the visual cortex, the parietal lobes, the temporal lobes, are coordinated by the brainstem, which orchestrates the overall state of REM sleep. The brainstem sends waves of activation through the brain, triggering bursts of neural activity that ripple through different regions. These are the PGO waves mentioned earlier, and they appear to serve as a kind of internal signal, a trigger that initiates different elements of the dream. But a dream is not just images and sensations. It is also a feeling. Dreams are saturated with emotion, sometimes subtle, sometimes overwhelming. You may feel joy, fear, sadness, anger, confusion, longing. These emotions do not arise randomly. They are generated by a small, almond-shaped structure deep within the brain called the amygdala. The amygdala is the brain's emotional center, particularly for processing fear and other negative emotions. During waking hours, the amygdala constantly evaluates incoming information, scanning for potential threats and tagging experiences with emotional significance. A loud noise, a sudden movement, an angry face, all of these activate the amygdala, triggering the body's stress response. But the amygdala also responds to positive emotions, to moments of connection, joy, and surprise. During REM sleep, the amygdala shows heightened activity. It becomes more active than it is during quiet waking moments, and in some cases, as active as it is during intense emotional experiences. This explains why dreams are so emotionally vivid. The amygdala is firing, generating feelings, coloring the dream with an emotional tone. A neutral image, a door, a hallway, a stranger can feel ominous or comforting, depending on the amygdala's influence. Research using fMRI scans has shown that the pattern of amygdala activity during REM sleep correlates with the emotional content of dreams. People who report anxious or frightening dreams show increased amygdala activation. Those who experience positive or emotionally neutral dreams show less. The amygdala, it seems, is not simply responding to the dream. It is actively shaping it, determining the emotional atmosphere in which the narrative unfolds. But here is something remarkable. During REM sleep, the amygdala is active in an environment where stress hormones are largely absent. Norepinephrine, the neurotransmitter associated with arousal, stress, and the fight or flight response, drops to nearly zero during REM sleep. This creates a unique neurochemical state. The brain can process emotional content, can activate the amygdala, can revisit fearful or distressing memories without triggering the full physiological stress response. This may be one of the most important functions of dreaming. Some researchers believe that REM sleep serves as a form of emotional therapy, allowing the brain to reprocess difficult experiences in a safe environment. During the dream, you may confront a fear, relive a painful moment, or work through unresolved emotions. But because norepinephrine is suppressed, the brain can do this without reinforcing the emotional intensity of the original experience. Over time, this process may reduce the emotional charge associated with certain memories, helping to regulate mood and prevent emotional overwhelm. Studies have shown that people deprived of REM sleep experience increased anxiety, irritability, and difficulty managing negative emotions. Conversely, those who get adequate REM sleep show better emotional resilience and improved ability to cope with stress. This suggests that dreaming is not a luxury, but a necessity for mental health. The emotional work that happens during REM sleep, the processing, the recontextualization, the gradual softening of fear is essential for emotional well-being. The prefrontal cortex, which during waking hours would modulate and regulate the amygdala's responses, remains largely inactive during REM sleep. This is why dream emotions can feel so raw and unfiltered. There is no rational voice saying, "This is just a dream," or "There's no real danger here." The emotion simply exists, experienced fully, without the critical distance that waking consciousness provides. And woven through all of this, the images, the spatial awareness, the emotion, are fragments of memory. Dreams do not unfold in a vacuum. They draw on the vast reservoir of experience stored in your brain, pulling out pieces and recombining them in ways that can seem strange, meaningful, or utterly nonsensical. The hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure nestled deep within the temporal lobes, plays a central role in this process. During waking hours, the hippocampus is essential for forming new memories. When you learn something new, when you experience an event, the hippocampus encodes that information, holding it temporarily before gradually transferring it to long-term storage in the cortex. This transfer process, called memory consolidation, happens primarily during sleep. During REM sleep, the hippocampus becomes active, replaying sequences of neural activity that occurred during the day. These replays are not exact recordings. They are compressed, fragmented, interwoven with older memories. A conversation you had this morning might appear in the dream, but the setting might be a place from your childhood, and the person you're speaking to might shift from a coworker to a family member. The brain is not trying to faithfully recreate experiences. It is integrating new information into existing knowledge, finding connections, building associations. This is why dreams often feel familiar even when they are bizarre. The elements are recognizable: a face, a street, a feeling, but they are combined in ways that defy waking logic. Your brain is exploring the network of associations that link different memories together. It is asking, in a sense, what does this new experience relate to? Where does it fit within what I already know? Studies have shown that people who learn a new task show increased hippocampal activity during subsequent REM sleep. The brain replays the task, strengthening the neural pathways involved, improving performance without conscious practice. This is why sleep after learning enhances retention. The hippocampus uses the quiet hours of the night to organize, refine, and solidify what was learned during the day. But not all memories appear in dreams with equal frequency. The hippocampus prioritizes emotionally significant experiences. Events that triggered strong feelings, whether positive or negative, are more likely to be replayed during sleep. This makes evolutionary sense. Emotionally charged experiences are often those that matter most for survival. A dangerous encounter, a successful strategy, a meaningful social interaction. These are the memories worth preserving, worth integrating deeply into long-term storage. Dreams, then, are not random. They are shaped by what you experienced, what you felt, what your brain deems important enough to process further. The architecture of a dream: the thalamus generating sensory signals, the cortex constructing images and space, the amygdala coloring everything with emotion. The hippocampus weaving in fragments of memory reflects the brain's ongoing effort to make sense of experience, to integrate the new with the old, to prepare for what comes next. You do not consciously direct this process. You are both inside the dream and created by it, experiencing a reality that your own brain is building in real time. And though you will forget most of it by morning, the work being done right now, the emotional processing, the memory consolidation, the neural reorganization, will shape who you are when you wake. Every moment of waking life leaves a trace. A conversation with a friend, the taste of morning coffee, the route you drove to work, the feeling of sunlight on your skin. All of these experiences create patterns of neural activity in your brain. But these patterns are fragile at first, easily disrupted like footprints in sand. If they are to become permanent memories, if they are to shape who you are and what you know, they must be consolidated, strengthened, woven into the fabric of long-term storage. And this work happens primarily during sleep. Sleep is not a time when the brain forgets. It is a time when the brain remembers. While you lie here, unaware, your brain is sorting through the events of the day, deciding what to keep and what to discard, transferring information from temporary storage into permanent archives. This process is so essential that without adequate sleep, memory formation becomes severely impaired. Students who stay up all night studying before an exam retain less information than those who sleep. Skills practiced during the day improve more after a night of sleep than after an equivalent period of wakefulness. The hippocampus, that small seahorse-shaped structure deep within the temporal lobes, plays a central role in this process. During waking hours, the hippocampus acts as a temporary holding area for new memories. When you learn someone's name, when you navigate a new route, when you experience a significant event, the hippocampus encodes that information, creating a neural representation that can be recalled later. But the hippocampus has limited capacity. It cannot hold everything indefinitely. For memories to persist beyond a few days, they must be transferred from the hippocampus to the cortex, where they can be stored for years, decades, or even a lifetime. This transfer happens during sleep, and it begins in the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, during slow-wave sleep, when the brain produces those long, rolling delta waves. As you descended into deep sleep earlier tonight, as your body relaxed and your breathing slowed, your hippocampus began to replay the day's experiences, not continuously, but in bursts. Brief, rapid sequences of neural activity that compress hours of waking experience into seconds of sleep time. These bursts are called sharp wave ripples, and they are one of the most remarkable phenomena in neuroscience. Sharp wave ripples occur during the quiet periods between delta waves, when the hippocampus momentarily becomes very active. During these ripples, neurons fire in the same sequence they fired during a waking experience, but much faster, up to 20 times faster than real time. If you spent the afternoon walking through a new neighborhood, the neurons that encoded that walk will fire again during sleep, retracing the path in compressed form. If you had an important conversation, the neurons that represented that conversation will replay, rehearsing the interaction. This replay is not random. The hippocampus prioritizes experiences that are emotionally significant, novel, or relevant to future goals. A mundane detail, the number of cars in a parking lot, the color of a stranger's shoes, is unlikely to be replayed. But a face you need to remember, a skill you are trying to learn, a moment that stirred strong emotion. These are the memories the brain chooses to consolidate. Each time the hippocampus replays a memory during sleep, it communicates with the cortex. The sharp wave ripples in the hippocampus are accompanied by sleep spindles in the cortex, those brief bursts of rapid brain activity that appeared earlier in stage 2 sleep. These spindles act as a kind of bridge, allowing information to flow from the hippocampus to the cortex. With each replay, the cortical representation of the memory becomes stronger, more stable, less dependent on the hippocampus. Over time, as a memory is replayed repeatedly across multiple nights, it becomes fully integrated into the cortex. The hippocampus is no longer needed to retrieve it. This is why older memories, those from years ago, can remain intact even if the hippocampus is damaged, while recent memories are lost. The consolidation process has already transferred those older memories to long-term storage. But consolidation is not simply a matter of copying information from one brain region to another. It is a process of transformation. As memories are replayed during sleep, they are integrated with existing knowledge. The brain does not store each experience in isolation. Instead, it builds networks of association, linking new information to what is already known. A new fact about biology connects to what you learned in a previous class. A new face reminds you of someone you knew years ago. The brain is constantly organizing information, finding patterns, building schemas that allow you to understand the world more efficiently. This is why sleep does not just preserve memories, it enhances them. Studies have shown that people who sleep after learning often discover insights and connections that were not apparent during waking study. The brain, freed from the immediate demands of conscious thought, can explore the relationships between different pieces of information, finding solutions to problems that seemed intractable the day before. The dialogue between the hippocampus and the cortex during slow-wave sleep is highly coordinated. Delta waves in the cortex create windows of opportunity when neurons are most receptive to incoming signals. Sharp wave ripples in the hippocampus occur during these windows, timing their bursts of activity to coincide with the moments when the cortex is listening. Sleep spindles then facilitate the actual transfer of information, strengthening the synaptic connections that encode the memory. This coordination is not accidental. It is the result of millions of years of evolution, a system refined over countless generations to ensure that important information is retained. Sleep, in this sense, is not a luxury, but a biological necessity. It is the time when the brain consolidates what it has learned, preparing to take in new information the following day. Not all types of memory are consolidated in the same way. Declarative memories, facts, events, explicit knowledge, are primarily consolidated during slow-wave sleep. This is the stage when the hippocampus is most active, when replay is most frequent, when the transfer to the cortex occurs most efficiently. But there are other types of memory, procedural memories, emotional memories, that rely more heavily on REM sleep. As the night progresses, as you cycle through stages of sleep, the balance shifts. The early part of the night, when you spent the most time in deep sleep, was dominated by declarative memory consolidation. But now, as REM periods grow longer and more frequent, a different kind of memory work begins. Procedural memories. How to play a musical instrument, how to type on a keyboard, how to navigate a familiar route, are strengthened during REM sleep. These are not memories you can easily put into words. They are encoded in the motor system, in the cerebellum and basal ganglia, in the patterns of neural activity that control movement and coordination. During REM sleep, these patterns are replayed and refined, improving performance without conscious practice. Musicians who sleep after practicing a new piece make fewer errors the next day than those who do not. Athletes who get adequate REM sleep show improved motor skills. The brain is rehearsing, fine-tuning the neural circuits involved in these tasks, solidifying the connections that allow smooth, automatic execution. REM sleep also plays a crucial role in consolidating emotional memories. As discussed earlier, the amygdala is highly active during REM sleep, processing emotionally charged experiences in an environment where stress hormones are suppressed. This allows the brain to preserve the memory of an emotional event while reducing the intensity of the emotion itself. Over time, this process can help regulate mood, prevent emotional overwhelm, and allow difficult experiences to be remembered without triggering the full physiological stress response. But not everything is remembered. Forgetting is not a failure of the memory system. It is an essential feature. The brain cannot store every detail of every experience. If it did, memory would become cluttered with irrelevant information, making it difficult to retrieve what actually matters. During sleep, the brain is not only strengthening important memories, but also allowing unimportant ones to fade. Weak connections are pruned, irrelevant details are discarded, and only the most meaningful information is preserved. This selective consolidation ensures that memory remains functional, that the brain can efficiently access what it needs when it needs it. The conversation you need to remember for a meeting tomorrow will be replayed and strengthened. The exact color of the walls in the room where the conversation took place will likely be forgotten. The brain is always prioritizing, always deciding what is worth keeping and what can be let go. As you lie here, cycling through stages of sleep, your brain is engaged in this quiet work. Memories are being sorted, transferred, integrated, refined. Some will remain with you for years to come. Others are already beginning to fade, making space for what tomorrow will bring. And though you are unaware of this process, though you will wake with no memory of the night's labor, the work being done right now will shape what you remember, what you know, and who you become. You dream multiple times each night. As you cycle through stages of sleep, you enter REM periods again and again, each one bringing vivid imagery, emotion, and narrative. By morning, you will have experienced perhaps 4 or 5 distinct dreams, some lasting only minutes, others stretching for half an hour or more. Yet when you wake, most of this will be gone. You may remember fragments, a face, a feeling, a strange location, but the full experience dissolves almost instantly, leaving only traces that fade with each passing minute. This forgetting is not accidental. It is built into the neurochemistry of REM sleep itself. During dreams, your brain is flooded with acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter that creates the vivid, hallucinatory quality of the experience. But at the same time, norepinephrine, the chemical essential for transferring experiences into long-term memory, drops to nearly zero. Without norepinephrine, the neural pathways needed to encode and store memories cannot function properly. Your brain can create elaborate experiences during REM sleep, but it lacks the mechanism to preserve them. This is why dreams feel so real in the moment, but vanish so quickly upon waking. The experience is genuine, the emotions are felt, the images are seen, the narrative unfolds, but the memory of it is never fully formed. It exists only in the transient firing patterns of neurons during the dream itself. Once those patterns cease, once the dream ends, there is nothing stable left to retrieve. Even if fragments of a dream do make it into short-term memory, they are extraordinarily fragile. Studies show that dream recall decreases rapidly with time. If you are awakened directly from REM sleep and asked to describe your dream, you can often provide detailed reports. But if you wait even 5 minutes before attempting to recall the dream, much of it will already be lost. By the time you wake naturally in the morning, go through your routine, and start the day, nearly all traces of the night's dreams have faded. This process of forgetting is not uniform. Some people remember dreams frequently, several times a week or even every night, while others rarely remember dreaming at all. For a long time, scientists believed this difference was simply a matter of attention or interest. But recent research has revealed that dream recall is influenced by specific patterns of brain activity. One key region involved in dream recall is the temporoparietal junction, or TPJ, an area located where the temporal and parietal lobes meet. The TPJ is involved in attention, self-awareness, and the processing of sensory information. Studies using brain imaging have found that people who frequently remember their dreams show increased activity in the TPJ, both during sleep and during waking hours. This heightened activity may make these individuals more sensitive to internal mental states, allowing them to notice and encode dreams more effectively than those with lower TPJ activity. The hippocampus, essential for forming new memories, also plays a role in dream recall. Although the hippocampus is active during REM sleep, helping to generate the dream by pulling in fragments of memory, its ability to encode the dream itself is limited by the neurochemical environment. However, at the moment of waking, if the hippocampus is activated quickly enough, it may be able to capture some elements of the dream before they disappear. The transition from sleep to waking is critical for dream recall. If you wake suddenly from REM sleep, perhaps startled by a noise or an alarm, the dream is more likely to be remembered because the brain has not yet fully transitioned to waking consciousness. The neural activity patterns of the dream are still present, still accessible, and the hippocampus can briefly encode them before they fade. But if you wake gradually, moving through lighter stages of sleep before full consciousness returns, the dream is usually lost. The neural patterns shift, the brain begins processing external sensory input, and the fragile traces of the dream are overwritten by new information. This is why people who wake frequently during the night tend to remember more dreams. Each awakening provides an opportunity for the dream to be encoded, even if only partially. Conversely, people who sleep deeply and wake only once in the morning, moving smoothly from sleep to full wakefulness, are less likely to remember their dreams. The dream still occurred, but the conditions necessary for recall were never met. Personality and cognitive style also appear to influence dream recall. Studies have found that individuals who are more introspective, more attuned to their inner experiences, and more open to imaginative thought tend to remember dreams more frequently. This may be because they naturally pay more attention to internal mental states, both during waking hours and upon waking from sleep. They are more likely to pause and reflect on a dream before moving on with the day, giving the memory time to stabilize. In contrast, people who are highly focused on external tasks, who move quickly from sleep to action, may not give themselves the mental space needed to notice or encode dreams. The dream occurred, but it was never attended to, never given priority over the immediate demands of waking life. This does not mean these individuals dream less. Brain imaging studies confirm that REM sleep and the neural activity associated with dreaming occur in everyone. It simply means the dreams are not remembered. Age also plays a role. Children and adolescents tend to remember dreams more frequently than adults. This may be related to differences in sleep architecture. Younger individuals spend more time in REM sleep and have more frequent awakenings during the night, or it may reflect developmental differences in attention and memory encoding. As people age, dream recall often decreases, though this is not universal. Some older adults continue to remember dreams regularly throughout their lives. The content of a dream can also affect whether it is remembered. Dreams that are emotionally intense, whether frightening, joyful, or disturbing, are more likely to be recalled than neutral dreams. This makes sense from a neurobiological perspective. The amygdala, which processes emotion, is highly active during REM sleep, and emotionally charged experiences are prioritized by the brain's memory systems. A nightmare with its heightened fear response is more likely to leave a lasting impression than a mundane dream about everyday activities. Waking during or immediately after a nightmare is particularly common, which further increases the likelihood of recall. The emotional intensity of the dream may trigger a stress response strong enough to disrupt sleep, pulling you into wakefulness while the dream is still vivid. This is why nightmares are among the most frequently remembered dreams, even though they represent only a small fraction of total dream content. But for most dreams, those that are emotionally neutral, that unfold without distress or strong feeling, forgetting is the norm. And perhaps this is as it should be. If every dream were remembered with the same clarity as waking experience, the mind would become cluttered with narratives that serve no practical purpose. Dreams are not meant to be permanent records. They are transient experiences, part of the brain's ongoing work of processing emotion, consolidating memory, and maintaining cognitive function. The fact that dreams are forgotten does not diminish their importance. The brain benefits from the process of dreaming itself, the emotional regulation, the memory consolidation, the creative associations, regardless of whether the content is consciously recalled. In fact, some researchers suggest that forgetting dreams may be adaptive, preventing the brain from confusing dream experiences with real events. If dreams were remembered as vividly as waking life, it might become difficult to distinguish between what actually happened and what was only imagined during sleep. There are ways to increase dream recall for those who wish to remember more. Keeping a dream journal by the bedside and writing down dreams immediately upon waking can help. The act of recording strengthens the memory, making it more likely to be retained throughout the day. Setting an intention to remember dreams before falling asleep may also increase recall, possibly by priming the brain to pay attention to internal experiences upon waking. Waking during the night, particularly during or shortly after REM periods, naturally increases dream recall. Some people use alarms set to go off during typical REM windows, roughly 90 minutes after falling asleep, then every 90 minutes thereafter, though this disrupts sleep quality and is not generally recommended. Others find that simply allowing themselves a few quiet moments upon waking, before moving or engaging with external stimuli, gives the mind space to retrieve fragments of dreams. But for most people, most of the time, dreams will remain elusive. You will wake with only the vaguest sense that something happened during the night, a feeling that fades as the day takes hold. And this is not a failure. It is simply the nature of dreaming, a process designed not for conscious recall but for the silent, essential work that happens beneath awareness. Tonight, as you cycle through REM sleep again and again, you will dream. Your brain will create worlds, narratives, emotions. You may remember fragments, or you may remember nothing at all. Either way, the dreaming will have served its purpose. The emotional processing, the memory integration, the neural maintenance, all of this will occur whether you remember it or not. And by morning, as you return to waking consciousness, the night's dreams will have already begun to fade, making space for a new day and eventually for new dreams to come. Not all dreams are strange narratives or surreal landscapes. Some are simply feelings. You might dream of being chased without ever seeing the pursuer, feeling only the terror of the chase. You might dream of loss, a door that will not open, a voice that fades before you can hear it, and wake with a heaviness that lingers even as the images dissolve. You might dream of joy so vivid, so complete, that the waking world feels muted by comparison. Dreams speak in the language of emotion, and this language is often more powerful, more memorable, than any of the visual details that accompany it. This is not coincidental. The emotional intensity of dreams is rooted in the architecture of the sleeping brain, in the regions that become active during REM sleep, and the neurochemical environment that surrounds them. While the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, planning, and emotional regulation, remains quiet during dreams, the amygdala becomes highly active. This small almond-shaped structure, located deep within the temporal lobes, is the brain's emotional center. It processes fear, anxiety, anger, and other intense emotions, constantly scanning for threats and tagging experiences with emotional significance. During waking hours, the amygdala works in concert with the prefrontal cortex. When you encounter something that triggers fear, a loud noise, a sudden movement, an unfamiliar situation, the amygdala fires, activating the body's stress response. But the prefrontal cortex can modulate this response, providing context, reassurance, perspective. It tells you that noise was just a door closing, or that person is not a threat. This regulation prevents emotional reactions from becoming overwhelming. But during REM sleep, this balance shifts. The prefrontal cortex is largely deactivated, while the amygdala remains intensely active. Without the prefrontal cortex to provide context or regulation, emotions in dreams can feel raw, immediate, and disproportionate. A minor concern from waking life may become a source of overwhelming anxiety in a dream. A neutral image, a hallway, a staircase, a stranger's face, may be colored with dread or longing simply because the amygdala has tagged it with emotional significance. Functional MRI studies have shown that the level of amygdala activity during REM sleep correlates directly with the emotional content of dreams. People who report experiencing intense fear, anxiety, or sadness in their dreams show heightened amygdala activation during REM sleep. Those who report neutral or mildly pleasant dreams show less. The amygdala is not simply responding to the dream, it is actively shaping it, determining the emotional atmosphere in which the narrative unfolds. But the amygdala does not work alone. The hippocampus, which stores memory, provides the raw material for dreams, fragments of experience, faces, places, moments from the past. The amygdala then evaluates these fragments, determining which ones carry emotional weight. A memory that was emotionally significant during waking life is more likely to be incorporated into a dream and more likely to trigger an emotional response. This is why dreams often revisit moments of conflict, loss, fear, or longing. These are the experiences the brain has marked as important, as worthy of further processing. What makes the emotional processing that occurs during dreams particularly significant is the unique neurochemical state of REM sleep. During waking hours, when you experience something frightening or distressing, your body releases stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, and the neurotransmitter norepinephrine. These chemicals prepare the body for action, heightening alertness, increasing heart rate, and encoding the memory with a strong emotional charge. This is why traumatic or highly stressful experiences are often remembered with such clarity and intensity. The emotional arousal strengthens the memory, ensuring it will not be forgotten. But during REM sleep, something remarkable happens. The amygdala becomes active, processing emotionally charged memories, but norepinephrine levels drop to nearly zero. This creates a neurochemical environment that is unique, one in which the brain can revisit emotional experiences without triggering the full physiological stress response. The memory is reactivated, the emotion is experienced, but the body remains calm. Heart rate may fluctuate slightly in response to the dream content, but the flood of stress hormones that would normally accompany such an experience does not occur. This dissociation between emotional, content, and physiological stress may be one of the most important functions of dreaming. Some researchers have proposed that REM sleep serves as a form of overnight therapy, allowing the brain to process difficult emotions in a safe environment. During the dream, you may confront a fear, relive a painful moment, or work through unresolved feelings. But because norepinephrine is suppressed, the brain can engage with these emotions without reinforcing the traumatic intensity of the original experience. Over time, this process may reduce the emotional charge associated with certain memories. The memory itself is preserved, the facts, the details, the sequence of events, but the overwhelming emotional intensity gradually softens. What was once intolerable becomes bearable. What once triggered immediate distress becomes something that can be remembered without overwhelming pain. This is emotional regulation at its most fundamental level, occurring not through conscious effort, but through the quiet, repetitive work of REM sleep. Studies have shown that people deprived of REM sleep experience increased emotional reactivity, difficulty managing stress, and heightened sensitivity to negative stimuli. They are more likely to interpret neutral faces as threatening, more prone to irritability, and less able to regulate their emotional responses. Conversely, adequate REM sleep is associated with improved emotional resilience, better mood regulation, and a greater capacity to cope with stress. This suggests that the emotional processing that occurs during dreams is not optional. It is essential for mental health. The absence of the prefrontal cortex's moderating influence during dreams may actually serve a purpose. Without the rational mind stepping in to dismiss or minimize emotions, the brain can fully engage with them, exploring their contours, their connections to other experiences, their deeper meaning. The dream becomes a space where emotions can be felt without judgment, where fear can be confronted without the need for immediate action, where grief can be experienced without the pressure to move past it. This does not mean that all emotional dreams are pleasant. Many are not. Anxiety is one of the most common emotions reported in dreams, far more common than joy or contentment. Dreams of being chased, of falling, of being unprepared for an important event. These are nearly universal experiences. The prevalence of anxious dreams may reflect the brain's evolutionary bias toward processing threats. From a survival perspective, remembering and preparing for potential dangers is more important than dwelling on pleasant experiences. The amygdala is particularly attuned to fear and threat, and this bias carries over into the dreaming state. But even anxious dreams serve a function. They allow the brain to rehearse responses to stressful situations, to explore the feeling of fear in a context where no real danger exists. Some researchers have proposed that dreaming evolved, in part, as a threat simulation system, a way for the brain to practice responding to danger without the risk of actual harm. The anxiety you feel in a dream, though unpleasant, may be strengthening your ability to cope with real-world stress. Dreams also provide insight into emotional states that may not be fully acknowledged during waking hours. Sometimes the emotional tone of a dream reveals something about your inner life that conscious thought has not yet recognized. You may dream of loss before you consciously realize you are grieving. You may dream of conflict before you acknowledge tension in a relationship. The amygdala, constantly monitoring emotional significance, may detect patterns that the conscious mind overlooks. The dream brings these emotions to the surface, even if they are not consciously remembered upon waking. The emotional work of dreaming continues throughout the night, across multiple REM periods. Each time you enter REM sleep, the amygdala re-engages, processing emotions, revisiting unresolved feelings, continuing the work of regulation and integration. By morning, though you may not remember the dreams themselves, the emotional processing has been done. You may wake feeling lighter, more settled, without knowing why. Or you may wake with a lingering unease, a sign that the night's work is not yet complete, that some emotion requires further attention. The emotional language of dreams is not always clear. It does not speak in words or logical arguments. It speaks in sensations, in atmospheres, in the quality of a feeling that cannot quite be named. But this language is no less real, no less meaningful than the language of waking thought. The emotions experienced in dreams are genuine. The fear, the joy, the sadness, all of it is felt, processed, integrated into the ongoing narrative of your emotional life. You cannot consciously control what you feel in a dream, any more than you can control the images that appear, but you do not need to. The brain knows what it needs to process, which emotions require attention, which memories need to be softened or strengthened. The dream unfolds according to its own logic, guided by systems that have been refining this process for millions of years. And though the experience may be forgotten by morning, the emotional work remains, the regulation, the integration, the gradual easing of what was once too difficult to bear. All of this happens quietly, beneath awareness, in the language of dreams. Not all dreams fade gently into the background of the night. Some arrive with force, sudden, vivid, and overwhelming. You wake gasping, heart pounding, drenched in sweat. The image is still vivid behind your eyes. The feeling lingers, even as you recognize the familiar surroundings of your bedroom, even as you remind yourself that it was only a dream. This is a nightmare, and it is not simply a bad dream. It is a distinct neurological event with its own patterns of brain activity, its own triggers, and its own purpose within the architecture of sleep. Nightmares occur most frequently during REM sleep, typically in the latter half of the night when REM periods are longest and most intense. Like other dreams, they involve vivid imagery, narrative structure, and strong emotion. But what distinguishes a nightmare from an ordinary anxious dream is the intensity of the fear response and the fact that this fear is often severe enough to wake you. The emotional intensity becomes so overwhelming that it disrupts sleep itself, pulling you out of REM and into wakefulness. The brain activity during nightmares shows distinct patterns. The amygdala, already active during normal REM sleep, shows even greater activation during nightmares. Functional MRI studies have revealed that people experiencing frequent nightmares display heightened amygdala activity, not only during sleep, but also during waking hours when exposed to negative emotional stimuli. This suggests that nightmare sufferers may have a hyperactive threat detection system, one that is more sensitive to potential danger even during normal dreaming. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, particularly the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which normally helps regulate the amygdala and modulate fear responses, shows reduced connectivity with the amygdala during nightmares. This disconnection means that the fear generated by the amygdala goes unchecked, unmodulated by the rational brain regions that would normally provide context and perspective. The result is fear that feels absolute, inescapable, and utterly real in the moment. The content of nightmares is not random. Common nightmare themes, being chased, falling, being attacked, experiencing the death of a loved one, being trapped or paralyzed, reflect fundamental human fears that have evolutionary roots. These are scenarios that, throughout human history, have posed genuine threats to survival. The brain's tendency to rehearse these fears during sleep may have served an adaptive function, allowing our ancestors to mentally prepare for potential dangers. But nightmares are also deeply personal. They draw on individual experiences, traumas, and unresolved emotional conflicts. People who have experienced traumatic events are significantly more likely to have recurring nightmares, often featuring elements of the original trauma. This is particularly common in post-traumatic stress disorder, where nightmares can persist for months or years after the traumatic event. The hippocampus, which stores memory, plays a crucial role in trauma-related nightmares. During a traumatic experience, the hippocampus encodes the memory with an exceptionally strong emotional charge, marking it as critically important. During subsequent REM sleep, this memory is repeatedly reactivated, appearing in dreams with vivid, distressing detail. But in cases of trauma, the normal emotional processing that should occur during REM sleep becomes disrupted. Under normal circumstances, REM sleep allows the brain to process emotional memories in an environment where stress hormones are suppressed. This enables the gradual reduction of emotional intensity over time. But in individuals with PTSD or acute trauma, this system appears to malfunction. Instead of reducing the emotional charge of the traumatic memory, nightmares repeatedly expose the person to the same fear without providing resolution. The memory is reactivated night after night, but the fear does not diminish. In some cases, it may even intensify, creating a cycle where nightmares reinforce the trauma rather than healing it. Research has shown that in people with PTSD, the balance between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex is disrupted. The amygdala remains hyperactive, constantly scanning for threats, while the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate this activity is impaired. This dysregulation affects both waking hours and sleep. During nightmares, the lack of prefrontal control means that the fear response cannot be modulated, and the dreamer experiences the full intensity of the trauma over and over again. The anterior cingulate cortex, a region involved in emotional regulation and conflict monitoring, also shows altered activity during nightmares. This area normally helps the brain assess whether a threat is real or imagined, but during nightmares, particularly in trauma survivors, this assessment function is compromised. The dreaming brain cannot distinguish between the remembered threat and a present danger, responding as though the trauma is happening again in real time. Nightmares are not limited to trauma survivors. Many people experience occasional nightmares without any history of trauma. Stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation, certain medications, and even eating close to bedtime can increase nightmare frequency. When the brain is under stress during waking hours, the amygdala becomes more reactive, and this heightened reactivity carries over into sleep. The anxieties and fears of daily life become amplified in the dream state, where the prefrontal cortex cannot provide rational perspective. Sleep deprivation, in particular, has a powerful effect on nightmare frequency. When REM sleep is restricted, either due to insufficient sleep time or fragmented sleep, the brain compensates during subsequent sleep by entering REM more quickly and staying in REM for longer periods. This phenomenon, called REM rebound, often results in more intense, more emotional, and more disturbing dreams. The brain is attempting to catch up on the emotional processing it missed, but the compressed, intensified REM sleep can produce nightmares rather than ordinary dreams. Certain medications, particularly those that affect neurotransmitter systems, can also trigger nightmares. Antidepressants that increase serotonin or norepinephrine levels, beta blockers used for heart conditions, and medications for Parkinson's disease have all been associated with increased nightmare frequency. These drugs alter the neurochemical balance that normally regulates sleep and dreaming, sometimes producing side effects that include vivid, disturbing dreams. But regardless of the cause, all nightmares share certain features. They activate the amygdala intensely. They involve themes of threat, danger, or loss. They evoke fear strong enough to disrupt sleep, and they leave a residue, a lingering sense of unease that can persist into waking hours. Yet even nightmares may serve a function. Some researchers propose that nightmares represent the brain's attempt to process fear, to rehearse responses to threat, and to prepare for potential danger. This threat simulation theory suggests that nightmares evolved as a survival mechanism, allowing the brain to practice responding to dangerous situations in a safe environment. Though the experience is unpleasant, the repeated exposure to fear in dreams may strengthen emotional resilience and improve the ability to cope with real-world threats. For individuals with trauma, nightmares may represent the brain's struggle to integrate an experience that was too overwhelming to process at the time it occurred. The nightmare is an attempt at emotional regulation, even if that attempt is failing. The brain keeps returning to the traumatic memory, trying to make sense of it, trying to reduce its emotional intensity, even when the normal mechanisms of emotional processing are not functioning properly. Understanding this has led to new approaches to treating nightmares. Imagery rehearsal therapy, a technique where individuals deliberately rewrite the narrative of recurring nightmares while awake, has shown significant success in reducing nightmare frequency and intensity. The practice involves recalling the nightmare, then consciously imagining a different, less threatening outcome. This rehearsal appears to change how the brain processes the memory during subsequent sleep, gradually reducing the emotional charge associated with the nightmare. Lucid dreaming techniques, which allow individuals to become aware that they are dreaming while still asleep, have also been explored as a treatment for nightmares. When a person achieves lucidity during a nightmare, they can sometimes exert control over the dream, transforming the threatening scenario into something less frightening. Research suggests that people who experience frequent lucid dreams report fewer nightmares overall. The study of nightmares has revealed much about how the brain processes fear and trauma. It has shown that emotional regulation during sleep is not always automatic. that trauma can disrupt the natural healing processes of REM sleep, and that the brain sometimes needs help to restore balance. Nightmares are not signs of weakness or dysfunction in themselves. They are evidence of a brain trying to process something difficult, trying to restore equilibrium, even when the systems designed for that purpose are strained beyond their normal capacity. If you wake from a nightmare tonight, your heart racing, the fear still vivid, know that your brain was engaged in essential work. It was processing fear, confronting threat, attempting to regulate emotion. The experience may have been overwhelming, but it was not meaningless. And with time, with adequate sleep, with the right support when needed, the intensity will gradually soften. The nightmare will lose its power, becoming just another memory, filled with diminished emotional weight. The brain has remarkable capacity for healing, for adaptation, for finding its way back to equilibrium. Even in darkness, even in fear, the work of restoration continues. There is a rare and remarkable phenomenon that occurs at the boundary between dreaming and waking consciousness. It happens during REM sleep, when the brain is already active, when dreams are already unfolding, but something unusual occurs. Instead of accepting the dream without question, instead of moving through the narrative unaware, the dreamer suddenly realizes, I am dreaming. This moment of recognition, this sudden awareness within the dream itself, is called lucid dreaming. In a lucid dream, you know you are asleep. You know that the world around you is not real, that it is constructed by your own brain, that the physical laws of waking life do not apply here. Yet the dream continues. The imagery remains vivid. The emotions feel genuine. The experience unfolds with all the sensory richness of an ordinary dream. But now, there is something new. A layer of awareness, a capacity for reflection, a sense of self that persists even within the dream state. Not everyone experiences lucid dreams. Studies suggest that roughly 55% of people have had at least one lucid dream in their lifetime, but only about 20% experience them on a monthly basis. A small number of people, perhaps 1 or 2%, have lucid dreams frequently, sometimes multiple times per week. The capacity for lucid dreaming varies widely, and scientists are still working to understand why some people spontaneously become lucid while others never do. Brain imaging studies have revealed that people who frequently experience lucid dreams show distinct neurological characteristics. The prefrontal cortex, the region at the very front of the brain responsible for high-level cognitive functions like decision-making, self-awareness, and memory retrieval, tends to be larger in frequent lucid dreamers. This area, which normally becomes deactivated during ordinary REM sleep, appears to maintain some level of activity during lucid dreams. It is this partial reactivation of the prefrontal cortex that allows for the self-awareness and reflective thought that characterize lucid dreaming. The experience of becoming lucid usually happens in one of two ways. Sometimes something within the dream triggers recognition, an impossible event, a bizarre inconsistency, something that simply does not make sense. The dreamer notices this oddity and suddenly realizes that they must be dreaming. Other times, lucidity arises without any obvious trigger. The dreamer simply becomes aware, often reporting that they just knew they were in a dream. Once lucidity is achieved, the dreamer's experience changes. There is often a sense of clarity, of heightened awareness, as though the dream has come into sharper focus. Many lucid dreamers report feeling excited or amazed at the realization that they are dreaming. Some gain the ability to exert control over the dream, to fly, to change the scenery, to summon objects or people, but this control is not guaranteed. Research by Stephen LaBerge, one of the pioneering scientists in lucid dreaming research, found that awareness and control are separate phenomena. Some dreamers become lucid but cannot control the dream. Others choose not to exert control, preferring simply to observe the dream with full awareness. The neurological basis of lucid dreaming has only recently begun to be understood. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, researchers confirmed that lucid dreaming was a real phenomenon by having participants signal from within the dream using predetermined eye movements, because the eyes remain connected to the motor cortex during REM sleep. Unlike the rest of the body, which is paralyzed, dreamers who became lucid could move their eyes in a specific pattern, such as twice to the left, twice to the right, then back to center. These signals, recorded on EEG equipment, provided objective proof that lucid dreaming occurs during REM sleep. What happens in the brain during a lucid dream is unlike any other state of consciousness. EEG recordings show that lucid dreaming produces a unique pattern of electrical activity, one that has features of both REM sleep and wakefulness. The delta and theta waves characteristic of REM sleep are present, but there is also increased activity in the gamma frequency band, particularly around 40 Hz. This gamma activity is strongest in the frontal and frontolateral regions of the brain, precisely where the prefrontal cortex is located. Gamma waves are associated with higher-order cognitive processes, conscious awareness, attention, and the integration of information across different brain regions. During ordinary REM sleep, gamma activity is minimal, but during lucid dreaming, gamma power increases significantly, suggesting that additional neural networks are being recruited, networks that are normally inactive during dreams. This heightened gamma activity appears to reflect the reactivation of the prefrontal cortex and the restoration of metacognitive abilities, the capacity to think about one's own thoughts, to monitor one's own mental state. Coherence, a measure of how synchronized different brain regions are, also changes during lucid dreaming. In ordinary REM sleep, coherence between different brain regions is relatively low, reflecting the fragmented, disorganized nature of typical dreams. But during lucid dreaming, coherence levels increase, particularly in the delta and theta frequency bands, and particularly in frontal areas. This suggests that lucid dreaming involves greater communication and coordination between brain regions, allowing for the integration of dream content with metacognitive awareness. The fact that lucid dreaming represents a hybrid state, neither fully asleep nor fully awake, has profound implications for understanding consciousness itself. Consciousness is not a simple binary state, present or absent. It exists along a spectrum, and lucid dreaming occupies a unique position on that spectrum. The dreamer experiences vivid hallucinations generated entirely by the brain, yet simultaneously possesses self-awareness and the capacity for volitional action. They can reflect on their experience, make decisions, remember their waking life, all while remaining physiologically asleep. The capacity for lucid dreaming appears to be trainable. While some people experience spontaneous lucid dreams without any effort, others can learn to induce lucidity through various techniques. One common method involves reality testing, repeatedly asking oneself during waking hours, "Am I dreaming?" and looking for signs that might indicate a dream state. The habit of questioning reality during the day eventually carries over into dreams, prompting the same question within the dream and leading to lucidity. Another technique is called mnemonic induction of lucid dreams, or MEILD. This involves setting an intention before falling asleep, telling oneself, "Tonight I will recognize that I am dreaming." The dreamer also practices recalling dreams and identifying dream signs, elements that frequently appear in their dreams and could serve as triggers for lucidity. Over time, this practice can increase the frequency of lucid dreams. Wake back to bed is another method, which involves waking after approximately 5 hours of sleep, staying awake for a brief period, then returning to sleep with the intention of becoming lucid. Because REM periods are longer in the latter half of the night, this technique increases the likelihood of entering REM sleep consciously. Not everyone finds these techniques effective, and the success rate varies widely. But research suggests that with practice, many people can increase their frequency of lucid dreaming. Some studies have found that people who are naturally more introspective, more self-reflective, and more open to new experiences are better able to achieve lucidity. Creativity too, appears to be associated with lucid dreaming, though the direction of causality is unclear. It may be that creative individuals are more likely to have lucid dreams, or that frequent lucid dreaming enhances creativity. Lucid dreaming has attracted interest not only from researchers, but also from clinicians exploring its potential therapeutic applications. For people who suffer from recurring nightmares, lucid dreaming offers a way to confront and transform frightening dream content. If a dreamer can become lucid during a nightmare, they may be able to change the outcome, to face the threat rather than flee from it, to rewrite the narrative in a way that reduces fear. Studies have shown that people who experience frequent lucid dreams report fewer nightmares overall. Imagery rehearsal therapy, which involves consciously reimagining nightmares while awake, shares some similarities with lucid dreaming. Both techniques involve gaining agency over dream content, shifting from a passive experience to an active one. The difference is that lucid dreaming allows this transformation to happen within the dream itself, in real time. There are also potential risks and challenges associated with lucid dreaming. Some people report that frequent lucid dreams disrupt the quality of their sleep, leaving them feeling less rested upon waking. This may be because the increased brain activity during lucid dreaming, the reactivation of the prefrontal cortex, the heightened gamma waves, interferes with the normal restorative processes of REM sleep. Others report difficulty distinguishing dream memories from real memories, particularly if lucid dreams are very vivid and occur frequently. There are also rare reports of lucid dreams leading to sleep paralysis, a state where the individual becomes aware before the REM atonia has fully dissipated, resulting in a feeling of being awake but unable to move. For most people, however, lucid dreaming is a neutral or positive experience. It offers a unique opportunity to explore the boundaries of consciousness, to experience a state that feels both real and unreal, to observe the brain's capacity to generate entire worlds from within. It also provides insight into the nature of ordinary dreams. By comparing lucid dreams to non-lucid dreams, researchers can better understand what role the prefrontal cortex plays in normal dreaming, and why that region is typically deactivated during REM sleep. Lucid dreaming reveals that the boundaries between different states of consciousness are more fluid than they might appear. Waking, sleeping, and dreaming are not discrete categories, but points along a continuum. Under the right conditions, elements of one state can intrude into another. The dreamer can become aware without waking. The sleeper can observe their own mind at work, watching as the brain constructs experience from memory, emotion, and neural noise. Tonight, as you move through your cycles of sleep, you may or may not become lucid. If you do, the experience may be brief. Lucidity is fragile, easily lost as the dream shifts, or the prefrontal cortex slips back into deactivation. But even a moment of lucidity is remarkable. It is a glimpse behind the curtain, a recognition that the world you perceive in dreams is not something happening to you, but something you are creating. And whether you remember it or not, whether you become lucid or remain unaware, the dreaming brain continues its essential work, processing, integrating, preparing for the waking world that lies ahead. Sleep is not a single descent into darkness, followed by a return to light. It is a journey that repeats, cycling through distinct stages again and again throughout the night. Each cycle lasts approximately 90 minutes, though this duration varies from person to person and can range from 70 to 120 minutes. By morning, after a full night of sleep, you will have completed 4 to 6 of these cycles, each one a complete passage through the architecture of sleep. The first cycle of the night begins with the descent you experienced earlier, the transition from wakefulness into stage 1, then stage 2, then the deep slow wave sleep of stage 3. This first period of deep sleep is the longest and most profound of the night. Your brain produces those long, rolling delta waves. Your body releases growth hormone, and the hippocampus begins its work of memory consolidation. You spend perhaps 20 to 40 minutes in this deep state, before ascending back toward lighter sleep. Then comes the first REM period, brief and tentative, lasting only 5 to 10 minutes. The dream that occurs during this first REM is often fragmented, less vivid than what will come later in the night. The imagery may be vague, the narrative loose, the emotions muted. This is the brain's initial foray into dreaming, a warm-up for the more intense REM periods that will follow. After this first REM period ends, the cycle begins again. You descend back through stage 2, perhaps briefly into stage 3, though this second period of deep sleep is shorter than the first. Then another REM period arrives, this one slightly longer, perhaps 10 to 15 minutes. The dream is a bit more vivid now, more emotionally engaging. With each subsequent cycle, the balance shifts. Deep, slow-wave sleep becomes shorter and may disappear entirely after the first 2 or 3 cycles. By the second half of the night, you are cycling primarily between stage 2 and REM sleep. But as deep sleep diminishes, REM sleep expands. The third REM period may last 15 to 20 minutes, the fourth 20 to 30 minutes. By the 5th or 6th cycle, in the early morning hours, REM periods can stretch to 40 minutes or even an hour. This shifting architecture means that different stages of sleep dominate different parts of the night. The first third of the night is rich in deep, slow-wave sleep. This is when the body does most of its physical restoration, when growth hormone is released, when the immune system is strengthened. The final third of the night is dominated by REM sleep. This is when the most vivid dreams occur, when emotional processing intensifies, when procedural memories are consolidated. If you were to wake after only 4 hours of sleep, you would have gotten most of your deep sleep but missed the majority of your REM sleep. You might feel physically rested but emotionally unsettled, less able to regulate mood, less creative in problem solving. Conversely, if you slept deeply for the first part of the night but were awakened repeatedly in the early morning hours, you would lose REM sleep and the dreaming that comes with it. Both stages are essential, and both require sufficient time to unfold fully. The 90-minute cycle is not arbitrary. It appears to be a fundamental rhythm of the sleeping brain, perhaps related to the basic rest-activity cycle that governs many biological processes. Even during waking hours, attention and alertness tend to fluctuate in roughly 90-minute intervals, though these ultradian rhythms are less pronounced and more easily disrupted by external demands. As the night progresses, the quality of dreams changes. Early dreams, those occurring in the first REM period, tend to be shorter, more thought-like, more closely tied to events from the previous day. They may feel less like narratives and more like brief scenes or impressions. A conversation replayed, a location revisited, a problem turned over without resolution. But as REM periods lengthen in the latter part of the night, dreams become more elaborate. The narratives grow more complex, more surreal, more emotionally intense. The brain has had more time to process the day's experiences, to integrate them with older memories, to explore associations and connections. The final dreams before waking, those that occur in the long REM period of early morning, are often the most vivid and bizarre. These are the dreams most likely to be remembered, because waking occurs so soon after they end. The content of dreams across the night also reflects the brain's shifting priorities. Early dreams often incorporate recent experiences, faces seen that day, places visited, tasks performed. This makes sense, given that the hippocampus is actively replaying recent memories during the early cycles of sleep. Later dreams, occurring after much of this replay has been completed, may draw more heavily on older memories, on deeper emotional concerns, on abstract associations that feel distant from daily life. Some researchers have proposed that dreams follow a progressive pattern of emotional processing throughout the night. Early dreams may simply register the emotional tone of recent experiences, tagging them with significance. Later dreams may begin to integrate these experiences with similar emotional memories from the past, building associations, finding patterns. The final dreams of the night may represent a more synthetic phase, where disparate emotional elements are woven together, conflicts are explored, and some degree of resolution is attempted. This is not a conscious process. The brain does not deliberately plan the progression of dreams across the night. But the changing neurochemical environment, the shifting balance between different sleep stages, and the gradual completion of memory consolidation all shape what appears in dreams and when. The cyclical nature of sleep also means that awakenings are more likely at certain times than others. The transitions between sleep stages, particularly the shift from REM back to lighter stage 2 sleep, are moments of vulnerability when external stimuli are more likely to penetrate awareness. A sound that would not wake you during deep, slow-wave sleep might pull you to consciousness during one of these transitions. This is why people often wake briefly at the end of a sleep cycle, sometimes just enough to shift position or register the time, before descending back into sleep for the next cycle. These brief awakenings are normal and usually not remembered, but they play a role in dream recall. If you wake at the end of a REM period, while the dream is still fresh, you are far more likely to remember it. If you wake during deep sleep or during the middle of a non-REM cycle, you may have no sense that you were dreaming at all. The cyclical architecture of sleep is remarkably consistent across the lifespan, though the proportion of time spent in different stages changes with age. Infants spend far more time in REM sleep than adults, sometimes as much as 50% of their total sleep time. This may reflect the intense brain development occurring in early life, with REM sleep supporting the formation of neural connections and the consolidation of new learning. As people age, REM sleep gradually decreases, and deep slow-wave sleep becomes lighter and more fragmented. Older adults may spend very little time in stage 3 sleep, though they still cycle between stage 2 and REM throughout the night. The rhythmic cycling through sleep stages is regulated by complex interactions between multiple brain regions and neurotransmitter systems. The brainstem, the hypothalamus, and the basal forebrain all play roles in orchestrating the transitions between wakefulness, non-REM sleep, and REM sleep. Neurons that promote wakefulness, those that release histamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine, become progressively less active as sleep deepens. Neurons that promote sleep, particularly those that release GABA, become more active. During REM sleep, a different set of neurons takes control. Acetylcholine levels surge, activating the thalamus and cortex, creating the vivid hallucinations of dreams. At the same time, neurons in the locus coeruleus and dorsal raphe nucleus, those that release norepinephrine and serotonin, fall completely silent. This allows REM sleep to proceed without the stress response that would normally accompany intense emotion. The switching between non-REM and REM sleep is controlled in part by a reciprocal interaction between these neurochemical systems. As acetylcholine builds up, it eventually triggers the transition into REM. As the REM period continues, other systems gradually reassert control, shutting down acetylcholine release and moving the brain back toward non-REM sleep. This back and forth creates the natural rhythm of the sleep cycle. External factors can disrupt this rhythm. Alcohol, for example, suppresses REM sleep during the first part of the night, then causes REM rebound later, leading to fragmented, disturbing dreams. Sleep deprivation increases the pressure for both deep sleep and REM sleep, causing longer and more intense periods of both when sleep is finally obtained. Stress and anxiety can fragment sleep, causing more frequent awakenings and preventing the smooth progression through sleep cycles. But under normal conditions, the cycles unfold with remarkable regularity. One after another, through the night, you descend and ascend, moving between depths and shallows, between stillness and vividness, between restoration and dreaming. Each cycle serves its purpose, consolidating memory, processing emotion, repairing tissue, maintaining neural connections. The cyclical structure ensures that all of these functions have time to complete, that no essential process is neglected. By the time morning approaches, the cycles have run their course. Deep sleep has restored the body. REM sleep has processed emotion and integrated memory. The brain has sorted through the previous day's experiences, deciding what to keep and what to discard, strengthening some connections and weakening others. The work is not always complete. Some processing may carry over into future nights, but enough has been accomplished to allow waking consciousness to return. Sleep is not a destination you reach and remain in until morning. It is a journey through stages, a cyclical passage that repeats with gentle insistence throughout the night. You do not travel this path consciously. You are unaware of the transitions, the shifts, the rhythmic rise and fall through different states of being. But the journey happens nonetheless, guided by ancient mechanisms that have been refining this process for millions of years. And when you wake, though you remember little of the night's travels, you are changed by them, rested, restored, ready to begin again. The question is as old as human consciousness itself. Why do we dream? Throughout history, cultures have offered countless explanations, messages from gods, prophecies of the future, windows into hidden realms. But science approaches the question differently, seeking answers not in metaphysics but in neurobiology, in evolution, in the observable patterns of brain activity during sleep. And what science has discovered is both illuminating and humbling. We know much more about dreaming than we did even a few decades ago, yet the complete answer remains elusive. What is clear is that dreams are not random noise. They are not the meaningless byproduct of a sleeping brain firing at random. The patterns are too consistent, the neural activity too organized, the effects too measurable for dreams to be dismissed as neurological static. Dreams reflect real processes: memory consolidation, emotional regulation, neural maintenance. And these processes serve functions that are essential for survival. One of the most well-supported theories is that dreams play a crucial role in memory consolidation. As discussed earlier, during sleep, the hippocampus replays experiences from waking life, transferring information from temporary storage into long-term memory. These replays appear in dreams, though often in fragmented, distorted forms. The face you saw today, the place you visited, the problem you struggled with, all of these can resurface in dreams, woven together with older memories, integrated into existing knowledge. Studies have consistently shown that sleep, and particularly REM sleep, enhances learning and memory. People who sleep after learning new information retain it better than those who stay awake. Skills improve after sleep without additional practice. Creative insights emerge after periods of dreaming. The correlation between sleep, dreaming, and memory is undeniable, but correlation does not fully explain causation. Does dreaming itself consolidate memory, or is dreaming simply a side effect of the memory consolidation processes that occur during REM sleep? This distinction matters. If the dream content is essential, if the experience of dreaming serves a specific function, that suggests one thing. If dreams are merely the conscious experience of memory processing that would happen regardless of whether we perceived it, that suggests something else. The evidence leans toward the latter interpretation. Memory consolidation occurs during sleep, whether or not dreams are remembered. People who rarely recall their dreams show the same memory benefits from sleep as those who remember dreams frequently. The neural mechanisms of memory consolidation, the hippocampal replay, the sleep spindles, the cortical reorganization, operate beneath conscious awareness. The dream, it seems, is the subjective experience of these processes, not the process itself. Yet this does not make dreams meaningless. The content of dreams reflects what the brain has deemed important enough to process. Emotionally significant experiences appear in dreams more frequently than neutral ones. Stressful events, unresolved conflicts, intense emotions, all of these are prioritized by the sleeping brain. Dreams may not be deliberate messages, but they are windows into the brain's ongoing work. Another prominent theory proposes that dreams serve an emotional regulation function. During REM sleep, the amygdala processes emotional memories in an environment where stress hormones are suppressed. This allows the brain to revisit difficult emotions without triggering the full physiological stress response. Over time, this repeated exposure may reduce the emotional intensity associated with distressing memories. helping to maintain emotional balance. This theory is supported by considerable evidence. People deprived of REM sleep show increased emotional reactivity, difficulty regulating negative emotions, and heightened sensitivity to stress. Conversely, adequate REM sleep is associated with improved mood, better emotional resilience, and enhanced ability to cope with adversity. The emotional tone of dreams correlates with amygdala activity during sleep, suggesting that the brain is actively processing emotional content during REM. But again, questions remain. Is the dream experience itself therapeutic, or is it the underlying neural processing that matters? Can the emotional regulation function of REM sleep occur without conscious dreaming? The research suggests that the neural mechanisms of emotional processing operate whether or not the dream is remembered. But some clinicians argue that consciously engaging with dream content through techniques like imagery rehearsal therapy can enhance emotional healing. The relationship between the subjective experience of dreaming and the objective neural processes is complex and not fully understood. A third theory, called the threat simulation theory, proposes that dreaming evolved as a way for the brain to rehearse responses to dangerous situations. Nightmares and anxious dreams, which are surprisingly common, may serve an adaptive function by allowing the brain to practice dealing with threats in a safe environment. The prevalence of dreams involving being chased, attacked, or endangered reflects fundamental evolutionary concerns. By repeatedly simulating these scenarios during sleep, the brain may be preparing itself to respond more effectively to real-world dangers. This theory is compelling, but difficult to test directly. It is true that dreams frequently involve threatening scenarios, and it is true that emotional and procedural learning occur during sleep. But whether dreams specifically function to simulate threats, or whether threatening content simply reflects the brain's general bias toward processing negative emotions, remains unclear. Evolution has shaped the brain to prioritize survival, and the amygdala's heightened activity during REM sleep may simply be continuing this prioritization into the sleeping state. Some researchers have proposed that dreams facilitate creative problem-solving by allowing the brain to explore unusual associations and connections that would be dismissed by waking logic. The deactivation of the prefrontal cortex during REM sleep loosens the constraints of rational thought, permitting novel combinations of ideas. This associative processing may explain why solutions to problems sometimes appear after sleep, why creative insights often emerge in the morning, why the phrase "sleep on it" has endured across cultures. But here too, the evidence is mixed. Sleep does enhance creative problem-solving, but it is not clear that the dream content itself is responsible. The neural reorganization that occurs during sleep, the formation of new connections, the integration of disparate information, may produce creative insights regardless of whether the sleeper experiences vivid dreams. What becomes apparent when examining these theories is that they are not mutually exclusive. Dreams may serve multiple functions simultaneously: memory consolidation, emotional regulation, threat simulation, creative problem-solving. All of these may be occurring at once, woven together in the complex neural activity of REM sleep. The brain is not a single-purpose machine. It is a massively parallel system, capable of processing multiple streams of information simultaneously, and sleep may simply be the continuation of this parallel processing in a different neurochemical context. Science has made remarkable progress in understanding the neurobiology of dreaming. We know which brain regions are active during REM sleep, which neurotransmitters rise and fall, which patterns of electrical activity characterize different sleep stages. We know that sleep is essential for memory, for emotional health, for cognitive function. We know that dreams are not random, that they draw on memory and emotion, that they reflect the brain's ongoing work. But we do not yet know, with absolute certainty, why the subjective experience of dreaming exists. We do not know why the brain generates narratives, imagery, and emotion that feel utterly real in the moment, but dissolve upon waking. We do not know why consciousness persists in this altered form during REM sleep, or what function, if any, the conscious experience itself serves. Perhaps the experience of dreaming is simply an epiphenomenon, a byproduct of the neural processes that serve other functions, like the light that emanates from a working engine. The memory consolidation, the emotional processing, the neural reorganization, all of this would happen regardless of whether we perceived it as a dream. The subjective experience may be incidental, a side effect of being a conscious organism whose brain continues to generate mental content, even during sleep. Or perhaps there is something about the conscious experience of dreaming that we have not yet understood, some function that only becomes apparent when the dream is experienced as a felt reality. Lucid dreaming suggests that awareness within the dream state can sometimes provide agency, control, and even therapeutic benefit. This hints that the boundary between unconscious neural processing and conscious experience may be more permeable, more significant than current theories account for. Science proceeds through questions. Each answer reveals new mysteries, new complexities, new horizons of inquiry. The study of dreaming is no different. We have learned much, but much remains unknown, and perhaps that is fitting. Dreams have always existed at the boundary between the known and the unknown, between the observable and the ineffable. They are experiences that feel profoundly meaningful in the moment, but slip away upon waking, leaving only traces, questions, and the quiet certainty that something important has occurred. What dreams mean, ultimately, may depend on the level of analysis. At the neurobiological level, they reflect memory consolidation, emotional processing, and neural maintenance. At the experiential level, they are narratives woven from fragments of memory and emotion, colored by the amygdala, shaped by the absence of rational oversight. At the psychological level, they may offer insight into concerns, fears, and desires that occupy the mind beneath conscious awareness. All of these perspectives are valid. None is complete. Tonight, as you dream, your brain will continue its essential work. Whether you remember the dreams or not, whether you find meaning in them or not, the work will be done. The memories will be consolidated, the emotions will be processed, the neural connections will be refined. And when you wake, you will carry forward the results of that work, even if the dreams themselves have faded into the background of the night. The night is ending. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, your brain begins to shift. The final REM period of the night draws to a close, perhaps the longest, most vivid dream cycle you experienced, though you may not remember it. The rapid eye movements slow, then stop. The brain waves that have been racing through theta and gamma frequencies begin to settle. The amygdala, so active during the dream, quiets. The prefrontal cortex, dormant for most of the night, begins to stir. You are ascending toward wakefulness, but this is not yet consciousness. First, you move back through stage 2 sleep. Theta waves still present, but the dream has ended. Your body, paralyzed during REM to prevent you from acting out dreams, regains its capacity for movement. You might shift position now, turn over, adjust the blanket, though you will not remember doing so. These movements are automatic, performed without conscious awareness. The transition from sleep to waking is orchestrated by your circadian rhythm, that internal clock located in the suprachiasmatic nucleus of your hypothalamus. For hours, this clock has been monitoring the passage of time, coordinating the various stages of sleep, ensuring that each phase receives adequate duration. Now, as dawn approaches, it begins to prepare your body for waking. Cortisol, often called the stress hormone, though it serves many functions beyond stress response, begins to rise. This surge, known as the cortisol awakening response, starts about 30 to 45 minutes before you typically wake. Cortisol levels increase gradually, peaking shortly after waking, providing the energy and alertness needed to begin the day. This is not the acute cortisol spike that comes with danger or anxiety. It is a gentle, predictable rise, part of the body's natural preparation for activity. At the same time, melatonin levels, which have been high throughout the night, begin to decline. As light enters the room, even through closed eyelids, even before you open your eyes, photoreceptors in the retina detect the change in illumination. These signals travel along the optic nerve to the suprachiasmatic nucleus, informing your internal clock that day has arrived. The pineal gland responds by reducing melatonin secretion, lifting the drowsiness that kept you asleep. Your body temperature, which dropped during the night to its lowest point in the early morning hours, begins to rise. This increase in core temperature is another signal that waking is near. The metabolic processes that slowed during sleep begin to accelerate. Heart rate, which has been variable throughout the night, slowing during deep sleep, fluctuating during REM, starts to stabilize at a waking baseline, adenosine. The molecule that accumulated throughout the previous day, creating sleep pressure, has been cleared during the night. The neurons that promote wakefulness, those that release histamine, norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine, are preparing to fire again. The neurons that promote sleep, which have been active all night, are beginning to quiet. You are still asleep, but sleep has become lighter, more fragile. External sounds that would not have reached your awareness during deep sleep now penetrate. A bird outside the window, footsteps in another room, the hum of morning traffic. These sounds are no longer filtered out entirely. They hover at the edge of awareness, not yet waking you but no longer entirely absent. The thalamus, which has been partially closed during sleep, limiting sensory information from reaching the cortex, begins to open its gates. Light, sound, the feeling of the sheets against your skin. All of this sensory information starts flowing into the brain more freely. The cortex, which has been cycling through various states of activity and quiet throughout the night, begins to activate more broadly. Networks that were offline during sleep, those involved in planning, decision-making, and executive function, start to come back online. The neurotransmitter systems that have been suppressed during REM sleep begin to resume normal function. Norepinephrine, absent during dreams, returns, allowing memories to be encoded again. Serotonin and histamine, which dropped during sleep, begin to increase, promoting alertness and attention. The balance of neurochemicals shifts from the sleep-promoting configuration that has dominated the night to the wakefulness-promoting configuration that will sustain you through the day. You are moving through the final stage of sleep now, stage 1, the threshold between sleeping and waking. Alpha waves appear in the EEG recording, those gentle rhythmic oscillations that mark the transition to wakefulness. Your muscles, fully relaxed during sleep, begin to regain tone. The profound stillness of the sleeping body gives way to small movements, a stretch, a yawn, the flexing of fingers and toes. And then, at some moment you cannot precisely identify, consciousness returns. Your eyes open. The room comes into focus. Familiar shapes, the quality of morning light, the texture of the ceiling above you. For a brief moment, there may be disorientation, a residue of the dream state not yet fully dissolved. Where are you? What time is it? Did something happen? But these questions fade quickly as the brain reconnects with the waking world. The night is over. You have been asleep for perhaps 7 or 8 hours, cycling through stages 4 or 5 times, visiting deep sleep in the early part of the night and dreaming more intensely as morning approached. But you remember almost none of it. The descent into stage 1, the slow wave sleep, the paralysis of REM, the dreams themselves, all of this has occurred outside conscious awareness, leaving only the sense that time has passed and rest has been achieved. Yet the work of the night is not lost. Though you do not remember the dreams, the emotional processing they facilitated has been completed. The fear or anxiety from yesterday may feel less intense now, softened by the repeated exposure during REM sleep in an environment where stress hormones were suppressed. The memories you needed to retain have been consolidated, transferred from the hippocampus to the cortex, integrated into long-term storage. Skills you practiced yesterday have been refined, the neural pathways strengthened during sleep without conscious effort. Your body has been restored. Tissues have been repaired. Cells have been regenerated. The immune system has been strengthened. Energy stores have been replenished. The brain has cleared metabolic waste that accumulated during waking hours, flushing out toxins through the glymphatic system that operates most efficiently during sleep. You feel different than you did when you lay down, perhaps more rested, more clear-headed, more capable of facing what the day will bring. Or perhaps, if sleep was disrupted or insufficient, you feel the absence of what should have been accomplished. The grogginess, the difficulty concentrating, the emotional fragility that comes when sleep does not fulfill its purpose. The morning light grows brighter. The world outside the bedroom is waking too. Sounds increasing, activity beginning, the day taking shape. Your brain, now fully alert, begins to engage with this external reality. Thoughts form. What needs to be done today? Where you need to go? What happened yesterday? The narrative of waking life reasserts itself, pushing the night further into the background. Within minutes, most traces of the night's dreams will be gone. If you do not make an effort to recall them immediately, they will dissolve completely, overwritten by the demands and experiences of the waking world. This is not a failure of memory. It is the natural order of things. Dreams were never meant to be permanent. They served their purpose during the night, and now that purpose is complete. But the work of sleep will continue to influence you throughout the day. The memories consolidated during the night will be accessible when you need them. The emotional regulation achieved during REM sleep will help you respond to stress with greater resilience. The physical restoration will sustain your energy and immune function. Sleep is not separate from waking life. It is woven into it, essential and continuous, the foundation upon which consciousness builds each day. Tonight, you will sleep again. The cycle will repeat. The descent through stages, the deep restoration of slow-wave sleep, the vivid dreams of REM, the quiet work of memory and emotion occurring beneath awareness. This pattern has repeated every night of your life and will continue for as long as you live. It is one of the most fundamental rhythms of human existence, as essential as breathing, as inevitable as the turning of the earth. The science of sleep and dreaming has revealed much about this nightly journey. We know the stages, the brain regions involved, the neurotransmitters that rise and fall. We know that sleep is not passive but active, not empty but full of purpose. We know that dreams are not random, but reflect the brain's priorities. What is emotional? What is novel? What requires further processing? Yet mystery remains. We do not fully understand why consciousness persists during dreams, why the brain creates narratives and imagery that feel so real, yet dissolve so quickly. We do not know all the functions that dreams serve, or why the subjective experience of dreaming exists at all. Perhaps some questions will never have complete answers. Perhaps that is fitting for a phenomenon that exists at the boundary between consciousness and unconsciousness, between the known and the unknowable. What is certain is that sleep matters. It matters for memory, for emotion, for health, for survival. Without it, the brain cannot function properly, cannot maintain the delicate balance required for well-being. Sleep is not time lost. It is time invested, time spent in restoration and integration, time that makes waking life possible. As you rise now and begin your day, the night recedes, the dreams fade, the cycles of sleep become distant, the hours spent in darkness slip from immediate awareness. But the work has been done. You carry forward what the night has given you, the consolidated memories, the regulated emotions, the restored body, the refreshed mind. And when evening comes again, when weariness returns and the world grows quiet, you will descend once more into sleep, trusting in the ancient processes that have guided this journey for millions of years.